welcome back to another episode of the SBK Betting Podcast, where we quite literally are coming to you during the calm before the storm. That is either Dudley or Eunice. Some extremely high winds predicted over the weekend. Hopefully our racing will not be in doubt on Saturday, as the team alongside me have been in flying form, not least the man who will likely avoid all the winds in his chateau somewhere beautiful in France. That is Ross Millar. Hats off to you, my friend. 25-1 winner of the Betfair Hurdle last Saturday, with glory and fortune, undermining all our theories that you have to be a novice to win this race. That was a pretty good gamble land.
Yeah, I was happy with that. And it's nice when you take a look and think that maybe the market's overplayed the novices and look away and on a rare occasion it comes off. So yeah, hopefully we'll keep the momentum rolling into this windy weekend.
Yeah, and Tom, myself, you and James were hot on Edwardstone, but you were very much berating the fact that Third Time Lucky was even in this race. And your screams and cries of "don't run him" unfortunately didn't make it to the Skelton. And unfortunately, you were right.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the performance I expected from Third Time Lucky. That's just not as good as he is. We've seen better already this year. I just think Dan Skelton should have watched the podcast, listened to me and kept him fresh. But there you go. We landed a nice nap with Edward.
Yeah, he really was. Next up, the Arkle. And as I said, napped up by yourself and James. I sided them as well with some other good bets as well, with Finn and Bill Savola, a 4-1 winner, and marked his card for the Champion Chase too. So good weekend in all. On to this weekend's action. 6 meetings in the UK and Ireland. Graded action at all the jumps tracks, and we are off to Ascot first, who hosts a 7-race card. And one of the most intriguing betting races of the day is the 225, the Swinley Chase over 3 miles. Fiddler on the Roof heads the market at 4-1. Asked me early, he was doubly entered. He's also in at Wincanton, which is his preference. 9-2, 17-2 for Caribbean Boy, 8-1 for Coba Lobo, 9-1 Larry, along with Hold That Torch. Regal Encore, the winner of this race 4 years ago, is 14-1 with Trucker Dog and Sojourn, and Fortescue is 16-1. 10 stand their ground. Quite a nice feel to this race. Fiddler on the Roof, who was within the weights reveal for the Grand National, was actually 25-1 for that race come April. He's freshened up since a second in the Labrets Trophy, a race that hasn't worked out hugely well, and currently heads the betting in this race. James, is he the correct favourite?
Yes, I think he is. Team Tizard hit form with a bang, didn't they, last weekend? I was at Kempton on Friday when they had 3 runners, 2 winners and a second, and a cracking Saturday as well. And they have had peaks and troughs of form, but Fiddler on the Roof as an individual, last season when the Tizards really had a bad year, he was that constant solid horse who kept finishing second to Monkfish at the festival, second to Allard here in December at Ascot, and also my next destination at Warwick. So he had a good season last year, despite not winning that much. He came back at Carlisle, won well, and you're quite right, the Ladbroke hasn't worked out too well, but 21 took part in that contest, and he's still around an absolute cracker. They've kept his mark clean for the Grand National, so he can run now, and his weight's not going to go up. This looks a nice race for him, especially with Ask Me Early, likely to be at Wincanton. There's only 5 in his race there. And I think 2 others of those are possibly running at Ascot anyway. So it could be a really weak opportunity for him at Wincanton. So on the whole, the race is cut up quite nicely. And his main rivals, Caribbean Boy, did win last time, but he looked a bit exposed. Coba Lobo, good second at Ascot behind Cat Tiger, but he's gone up £7 for that. And this is a stronger race. Larry always runs his race, but generally gets outclassed. So for me, it's not that strong when you compare it to what he's been running in. There's good novices last season, and obviously the Ladbroke last time, and with the team in such good form, top weight, but I don't think that'd be a problem. He's a class horse.
I was about to say top weight. That's the main aspect of this for him. That probably having to give at least £6 away is the only slight concern. We saw Brave Man's Game doing that in rip-roaring fashion last week, having to give plenty of weight away in a similar kind of race, a limited handicap. Caribbean Boy, though, he's the interesting one because there is form with Fiddler on the Roof as a novice chaser, and I do like the fact that James Bowen back on board is 2 from 2 with this horse. He is a bit of a liberty, and he was the horse that came down at that first fence the last time he was at Ascot, getting rid of Daryl Jacob, who's still on the sidelines because of that. But Tom, it looked like James Bowen back on board sort of revitalised him, got his jumping so much better at Kempton last time. And I think that race is working out okay, considering the horse he beat, Smarty Wild, was looming up for a big run before falling last Friday.
Yeah, exactly that, Jess. That's basically what I was looking at, to be fair myself. James Bowen, the fact that he came on Caribbean Boy and he somehow managed to get him to jump well. I mean, all his prior starts for Daryl Jacob, he was ploughing through every fence. James Bowen gets on and he jumps perfectly. Bowen's now 2 for 2 on Caribbean Boy. I think they're going to make it 3 from 3 in this race. That's not to say I don't fancy Fiddler on the Roof. I think he should be favourite here. The mean RPR to win this race in the last 10 years is 154. Now, that figure is perhaps a bit lower than it should be because Captain Chaos only achieved 139 last year. So you generally need to run to a mark of 160. I think only 2 horses in this field can do that, Fiddler on the Roof and Caribbean Boy. And as you mentioned, Caribbean Boy beat Fiddler on the Roof in the 2020 Berkshire Chase off level weights. You get £6 here from Fiddler on the Roof. Caribbean Boy's a bigger price, so he's got to be the play for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this horse, even though James believes he's exposed, I just don't think that they've been able to get the best out of him. He's just quirky. Those sheep pieces are finally working, and as you say, James Bowen looks to be the key for him. But he's back at Ascot where he had that first fence fall, so we'll see if that doesn't scare him being back here for the second time this season. Ross, as I said, you like to find horses outside of the top of this, Fiddler on the Roof, Caribbean Boy for James, Tom and I. What stands out to you here?
I just thought from a pace angle, there's a very strong likelihood there's going to be plenty of pace on. Cobolobo will probably make it. Fiddler on the Roof will want to be handy. Caribbean Boy will be quite positively ridden. So will Truckers Lodge. So will Sojourn. And I just wondered whether it might set it up for a closer. And 2 of those that would close in the back are Larry and Regal Encore. Both have got their best form at this course, and I think that's fairly notable. Larry, if you take in Niall Houlihan's £3 claim, is now back to the same mark of 132 as when winning, albeit a weaker race in October. But he was quite impressive how he came from a long way back and won that quite convincingly, I thought. Regal Encore was 9.5 lengths away that day, but he has got a £9 pull at the weights. He's down to a mark of 140, and Inchnee's had a wind surgery. He's 14 years old. I'm not sure many would go throwing wind surgery around to a 14-year-old if you didn't think there was still a bit of fire there. And his last wind surgery came in 2020, and he won first time out after that. So at 9-1 and 14-1 the pair, I'd take them against the field because I just think £5 for Fiddler on the Roof from a run that hasn't worked out. Cloudy Glen well beaten since, the 3rd well beaten, the 4th well beaten, the 5th well beaten, makes the Ladbroke form look suspect, and Caribbean Boy struggles to put 2 good runs together. And I fully accept they are the 2 class horses in the race, but I don't think they're rock solid. So I take them on with Larry and Regal Encore.
That's really interesting. That last time he had wind surgery was how many years ago? Was
2 years ago.
2 years ago, that turned into he won off the back of that. As always, a really interesting point to know. I'm going to add another horse in this as well, a big price, Fortescue, put in a big performance in the Peter Marsh last time out, using that Royal Pagaille form, who himself ran a great race on Ground Too Quick last Saturday, and he's been running well without winning all season, and it's a 16-1 shout as well. So some big prices hidden in there outside of the, as we said, the classier types, but Caribbean Boy for myself and Tom, Fiddler on the Roof for James, and a bit of Larry and Regal Encore for Ross. We'll head on to the Grade 1 race of the weekend, the 1538, to be precise, the 2 mile 5 furlong Grade 1 Ascot Chase, the race that has lacked a bit of depth in the past, but a good feel to it this year. That is if, and I say if, Fakir Dudery can make it over and brave the winds from Ireland. There's a bit of a shrewd judgment call from Team Joseph O'Brien to spot this opportunity for an extremely impressive winner of this season's Clonmel Oil Chase. And he's the current 4-1 favourite, 92 St Calvados, Fanny and Destravals 5-1, Dashel Drasher 11-2, Mr. Fisher 6-1, and it's 12-1 bigger the rest. Coming to you first, Tom Collins. As I said, hopefully he gets over. If he does, it has a really good feel to this race because he's got that win under his belt this season, but he's also ran well and defeat behind a very good horse in Allaho.
Yeah, all the money has been for Fakir Dudari this week. He was available around 5-1 at the start of the week and is a lot shorter now. We kind of need him to run, I think, not only because he brings an extra dimension to the race, but the fact we get to cross-examine the Irish form. Allaho, as you mentioned, has beaten Fakir Dudari the last twice. Allaho would win this race by a mile if he was in it, but he's not. Fakir Dudari is not as good as Allaho, as proven by the recent form. And it'll be interesting to see how he pans out across against the likes of Dashel Drasher, who is my selection in this race. Now, I don't think I've ever been a fan of Dashel Drasher, and that's not because I don't like the way he runs or anything. I just never backed him. But this time I'm gonna back him. He won this race so well last year. Fended off Master Tommy Tucker, the ill-fated Master Tommy Tucker, who was an excellent horse on his day. I just love the grit that Dashel Drasher has. He loves Ascot as well, which is a big positive. And last time out at Lingfield, over 2 miles 6, perhaps that wasn't the ideal trip for him. Dropping back a furlong will suit. And I think he's around, what price is he? 4-1, Jess? Around that price, he looks a value play to me.
11-2 currently, as we stand.
Even better.
So even better. And also returning to Ascot, a track he's farmed and just enjoys so well, it will probably be another key element too.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't back Dashel Drasher anywhere other than Ascot, I have to admit. But in this race last year, I thought he was beaten at many stages and he just kept finding more under pressure. You've got to love that about a horse. Now, I know he's got a very good connection with Matt Griffiths and unfortunately he can't ride. Rex Dingle is on and we're yet to see if that connection will be as good. But I think Dingle's a very good young rider and I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is and back Dashel Drasher for the first time.
Well, credit to where credit's due. Rex Dingle had won on him in a hurdle race 2 starts ago, which was a good sort of confidence boost for horse and jockey, probably, Ross.
Yeah, I think so. We discussed it, didn't we, when he first rode at Ascot back in October. And I don't think it was Rex Dingle that saw the horse beaten then. I think the ground conditions were too quick. And yeah, he stepped in and filled the big boots to fill. I mean, Matt Griffiths wouldn't be a big household name, but with Dashel Drasher, he had probably 2 contenders for Rider of the Year last year. Rex Dingle, to my eye, hasn't made any mistakes. I'd be with Tom. I think he's got a great chance here. I'm slightly concerned about the fairly quick turnaround from Lingfield, and I think plenty of horses that ran at Lingfield had hard races. But when you look back through his form and look at his style, he gives himself a hard race every time. And last year he came back after 27 days, won back-to-back at Ascot. Freru Bamboo ran at Lingfield in that big Lingfield Million weekend. He only had a 2-week break and he ran very well at Sandown. So I don't think there's a huge amount to say there. Fakir Dudari is going to have to jump better in the early stages. Clonmalley jumped very well. Punchtown and Turle since then, he's made mistakes early. And if he does that around Ascot, he's going to get on the back foot. That's going to cause him a problem. And then the other one I would just give a note to, and I'm not going to tip him up, Waiting Patiently. They've waited again very patiently with him. I thought it was a very strange run at Haydock last time, and I just wondered whether Brian Hughes's ultra quiet style maybe just allowed the horse to go to sleep a little bit and perhaps not turn it in. Jack Tudor takes over because Brian Hughes is at Haydock, and I just wondered whether Jack's enthusiasm of youth, well, he's not a wild rider, he might just perhaps grab hold of this old horse. He's shown very good form around Ascot. This track could just see him outrun his odds. 28-20
is perhaps a bit of a last chance saloon for this horse who's changed yard. Kristen Williams, he just did not run at all well in that Betfair Chase, despite having a good bit of support behind him. He's a big price for Saturday's race at 28-1. So that's Dashel Drasher for both Ross and Tom. James, I want to come to you next because the horse we talked a lot about previously on this podcast was Fanny and Destraval, second in a handicap chase under Lucy Turner last time, a massive run in defeat. And he deserves his place in this race as he's too good for handicaps now with a mark of official rating of 162 after that really fine effort.
Yeah, I napped him on that occasion. And I thought Lucy Turner, claiming the full 7, gave an absolutely fantastic ride. She was positive, jumped pretty well, just claimed by Phoenix Way off 10 stone 4. He was just well handicapped and she did absolutely nothing wrong. But the problem is, I suppose, then it's gone up. His rating went up £3, but she claimed the full 7, and I'm not sure she needed that full 7 as such. So I think 162 might just be a little bit on the high side for him, bearing in mind this time last year, he was only 4th to First Flow at Ascot, 4th to Say Royale in the Game Spirit at Newbury, 5th beating 54 lengths in the Ryanair, and then 4th to All Mankind on his return off 152. So while I like him, I think he's got a fantastic attitude. And Venetia Chai Deutsch are in fantastic form every Saturday. They keep having a big winner. I'm just not quite sure he's as good as that run appeared, with the £7 taken off his back, and that was an easier company. I really like St Calvados. I thought he ran an absolute cracker in the King George. Paul Nicholls is right to be absolutely miffed at Gavin Sheehan, because on a doubtful stayer, he just joined the fray, leaving the back straight. They were going 3 wide, and he just went far too soon on a potential non-stayer, and he still ran very well to finish third, 25-1. He had a wind up since joining Paul's. He looks as good as ever. He was only beaten neck by Min in the Ryanair at Cheltenham back in 2020. Heavy ground. Initially, I was a little bit doubtful about that, but he has won on that surface in the past at Cheltenham when he was trained by Harry Whittington, and when he first came over from France. I just felt he's been freshened up. 2-5, dropped back in triple suit. And interesting enough, stable jockey Harry Cobden's on today. Paul Nicholls has got his way. So while I love Fanning Destraval, I just think he might not be quite good enough in this kind of grade.
Yeah, really strong case there for St Calvados, having his second start following wind surgery. He's 92. As you said, James, Paul Nicholls clearly won the argument with Kate and Andrew Burks, who retained Gavin Sheehan, but Harry Cobden is on board this horse. He is a 9-2 chance currently as we speak. I'm going to put in a word for Mr. Fisher, and who will have James Byrne back aboard again. So hoping for a good day for him and Nicky Henderson. On a form line with Dorado Allen after his win in the Silvanarco Conti Chase, that's looking pretty good. Dorado Allen came back in and won last weekend at Newbury in the Denman Chase, which was a big surprise to everyone. But there was nothing fluky, I thought, about the performance. He's clearly another horse that Colin Tizard has been able to revitalise this season, and he put 2 and a bit lengths to Royal Pagaille. So that's working out well. I just have a lot of faith in this horse, Mr. Fisher. I think he's had his issues. They've managed to solve a few of them. I think he might have bled in the past. Maybe he did after Cheltenham in the Ryanair. And I think that this could prove the right race for him to follow up that victory last time out at Kempton. We'll head on to Haydock, which is the sort of second track for the feature racing of the day on Saturday. And we'll start with Rendlesham Hurdle. I found this a tricky race to call, a trappy race, although having an eye on what the guys have selected, there's an overwhelming support behind one horse, and we'll get to that in a moment. But Thomas Darby is currently the 15-8 favourite. Molly Ollie's Wishes is 9-4, 5-1 third win, last year's winner. Top Bill Ben is staying over hurdles. He's 7-1. Emma Tom 12-1. Holstone is 16-1. Ross, I'll come to you first. As I said, I found this tricky and trappy. It's not the best of races, but sometimes it sort of lacks a little bit of depth. Third wind, he won this last year. For me, he's not been in brilliant sparkling form this season, but maybe he just comes right at this time of the year.
Yeah, and maybe at this track. He's run twice at Haydock, ran a very good race in a handicap going down narrowly, before then last year going on to win this. I mean, Thomas Darby should win this. He effectively got £3 in hand at the weights, but he's so inconsistent and so unreliable. I went back through his form. He's been favourite 7 times in his career, and he's converted that twice. And one of those was at 1-5 on. So, I mean, that does tell you a fair bit about Thomas Darby. I think he's highly talented. I think he's probably a horse that's better picking up the pieces in a better race. So it wasn't a race I had a strong opinion on. Ollie's Wishes gets the mare's allowance, and if you could forgive the run behind Buzz at Ascot, you'd give her a chance, but it could just be that she's very good up against her own sex. I think last time she got a very good ride in a very bizarre race where one led off in front and everyone sat off, and actually the runner-up probably sat too far off. So I just couldn't get a handle on her to be confident. Third wind, loves this track, will like the heavy ground, and was probably value for more than the winning margin last year. He did idle very badly when he got to the front. So Tom O'Brien is going to want to hold on to him for as long as possible, hopefully get towed to the last, possibly by Top Bill Ben, and then hopefully pick it up from there and go on. But a disappointing race and not a race I had a strong opinion in.
Yeah, third win 5-1. I could see this market reshaping come the off day to that point that Thomas Derby just has been turned over at those prices plenty of time. And Molly Ollie's Wishes, as you say, just isn't quite up to this level when she is against the opposite sex. So James, yourself, third wind, to Ross's points, back at Haydock, which he enjoys. It's an uncompetitive event, and even though he was beaten fair and square by an in and out horse in Sporting John in the Pertemps Network Handicap Hurdle, a qualifier, he could just really enjoy coming back to this track.
Yeah, as Haydock, I just like to follow Haydock form. It does appear to be in a little bit isolation from other tracks, and it doesn't always transfer elsewhere, and it hasn't with this horse really. As you say, he's been a little bit disappointing since when the race 12 months ago, but Ross mentioned the main fact form, 17 runner handicap over course and distance. He only got denied by a horse, I think it was on his 7th or 8th consecutive win for David Pipe, and then he beat Lisnagar Oscar in the race last year. Thomas Derby, he has actually won on heavy ground. He's only run it once, and he has won on the surface. While I'm probably not quite as damning as what Ross is about him, he does disappoint on a bit of an alarming regularity. Molly's Ollie's Wishes had quite a hard race, I thought, at Ascot last time. Again, as Ross mentioned, due to the slightly strange nature of the race, I felt Harry ended up going early enough to beat that long-time leader, and then she got a little bit tired in the closing stages. But she's brilliant against mares. Is she quite as good against a gelding? So it's a funny race. I'm just sticking with Haydock form, and they're going to stick with Lash's winner, third wind.
Yeah, without labouring the point too much, Tom, as we said, the other two have agreed about this point. Although I have to say, my opinion is that there's a bit of a fly in the ointment here in Topville Ben, who, I love this quote from his owner: he'll fall over barrels on a bad day and jump a 10-foot fence on a good one. So you don't really know what you'll get with him. It was a bit of a surprise to everyone that he returned from chasing to win last time out at Lingfield. He does have course form, if that is something that we're trying to look for as well. And at 7-1, he represents a good price in what is just such a trappy race. And Molly Ollie's Wishes, probably similar to your opinion on Third Time Lucky last year. Don't know why you're running her. Keep her freshened up for the mares race, which we're getting very close to Cheltenham at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to emulate exactly what everyone else has said, but I'll keep it to a fine point. Molly Ollie's Wishes bet against mares. Thomas Derby, I think, will hate the ground. Yes, has won on heavy before, but Ollie Murphy has consistently said needs good ground. He doesn't handle heavy. I think he's the lay of the week. 15-8 is a ridiculously short price. He should be 5-1, and even then, I still wouldn't be backing him, despite the fact he's highest rated horse in the race. I think 5-1 on third wind is a super attractive bet. The bet of the week by far, and that's across UK and US. Going to put my neck out and say that. The course form, 2 of his 3 best career runs have come at Haydock, and he's only ever had 2 starts here. So that shows how well he goes at the track. I genuinely just think he's the bet of the week. I can't show you how much I fancy this horse. I think he should be favourite. I reckon he might be favourite come the off.
Well, we're 5-1 as time speak right now. So whenever you end up listening to this, it's either Tom Collins' money or everyone else's on this podcast is bet of the week. Big words from Tom Collins, because you've got a good card at Lingfield as well on Saturday. More of that a bit later as well. But third win for all the guys, bar me, and I'm going to keep my faith in Topville Ben at 7-1. But I feel like the others have made a very, very good case for Hugh Morrison's horse. So we'll see how the Rendlesham plays out come Saturday. The final race that we'll look at is always competitive, maybe slightly lax on depth. They're on a huge amount of runners, but the Grand National Trial over 3 miles, 4.5 furlongs will take place at 2:40 at Haydock. And Secret Reprieve, who's not had the ideal prep this season, but ran in the Welsh National on his seasonal reappearance after nearly a year off the track, ran 5th. The handicap has dropped him £2 for that. He's the 3-1 favourite for this. And Card is 6-1. Sam Brown is 13-2. Black Lion, who's made a miraculous return to the racecourse at his older age and is coming off the back of 2 wins, is 9-1 with Bristol Demai and Lord de Menil, who's last year's winner. The Galloping Bear is 12. Time to Get Up is 14s, and it's 16-1. Mint Condition and Bigger the Rest. There's a lot of interesting form coming in through a lot of these horses that I thought that was made this race very attractive betting wise. As I said, Lord of the Mill, last year's winner, the Galloping Bear, he's one of 15 horses trained by Ben Clark, and he's coming into this off the back of a really good, strong run. Ross, thoughts on the prep and the route through to this Grand National, essentially, which will be their main target, the Evan Williams team for Secret Reprieve, who's quite short at 3-1 off the back of that first race and not having done a huge amount of racing at all in his life.
Yeah, you get the impression that maybe things haven't gone all that smoothly since he won the Welsh National. And obviously, they went to the Welsh National this year without a prep, which I think was possibly ground driven, and they didn't want to run on good ground. And we had an awful lot of good ground through the early part of the season. I'm not generally a big fan of backing horses when they've not appeared to have a clearly laid out plan, and I think that could perhaps apply to Secret Reprieve. He's jumped very well around Chepstow. He jumped very badly on one visit to Haydock before eventually falling, and that sticks in my mind. So I'm keen to look elsewhere. All week I was certain I was going to tip Sam Brown. I mentioned him in a SBK handicap piece. He's only £2 higher, staying on very well to narrowly beaten by Royal Pagaille last time. Royal Pagaille, as you mentioned, has franked that form. And I think if he'd have jumped either of the last two fences as well as Royal Pagaille did, dare I say, if he had Charlie Deutsch on him, he would have won last time. I'm very confident of that. But then when you look back through his form, and I might be overthinking this now, he does just struggle to string his runs together. And that concerns me. And Cardet has got good course form. Black Lion has got good course form. They're both up an eye-watering £9. Galloping Bear, I tipped for the Welsh National. He didn't run, and then thankfully remembered to back him when he won at Lingfield. But he jumped a number of fences at Lingfield by Braille. He was not an easy watch. I think Haydock is a stiffer jumping test. Lord of Menil is £4 higher than winning it last year. So the one I came down on, and the more I looked, the more confident I became, off just 10 stone 4. And I do think on heavy ground conditions, light weights can be an exaggerated advantage. 16-1 is mint condition. Got Brian Hughes on a eye-catching booking, stayed on really well on heavy ground over 2 miles 6 to beat Ashdown Lad, who's a solid yardstick. I could see this step up in trip really suiting. He's shown he likes the course. As James mentioned earlier, I think Haydock course form is certainly something to follow. So for me, 16-1, I thought he was a great each-way bet.
Yeah, it's huge price when you look at it from that way. They clearly think a lot of this horse, pitching him in at a race such as the Grade 2 he ran in at Warwick last time, where he wasn't exactly, it was actually unfancied. What went wrong that day?
I think possibly lively enough ground, and he's probably just not quite up to that class. 10 stone 4 in a handicap is very different to level weights around Warwick. He did. I don't think you can argue the course wouldn't have suited, because he did win over hurdles around Warwick. I think he won a Grade 2 hurdle around Warwick actually. But he just struck me, the way he stayed on from the last at Haydock last time just says to me that he's an out and out dour stayer, and he could improve a lot for this extra, virtually half mile. So the more I looked at him, the more confident I became. Yeah,
he's I asked that question because he was really quite disappointing. I felt like he didn't finish out his race as I know that he can do in the past. But as I say, Haydock form comes into it, and Brian Hughes is a great booking for the Jenny Candish yard. So Ross has got another big price selection for us at 16-1. James, I'll come to you next. Is there a few horses in this race who've been here, done that, or at least attempted it, and card one of them? I thought that this quote was interesting, that they thought that they'd done a bit too much too early when they ran him in this trial last year. So they tried to hold on a bit longer and go with one run for the last race he won here at Haydock. And that plan went out, and he won very impressively. The big hike up in the weight, does that worry you?
Not too much, because Remastered was back in second. He was a decent horse in his own right. He beat him by 10 lengths. It was a 16-runner contest. And he's been very highly regarded by the Newland team, because he was 4-1 favourite for the race last year on the back of a win at Ascot when he beat Cobra Lobo by 3.5 lengths. That was off a mark of 1.32. He was only 12-1 for the Scottish National. He did pull up, and he was going quite nicely when he unseated behind Sam's Adventure here at the track December, about 15 months ago. So all in all, I think he could be quite good. He is inconsistent, but all my other Haydock specialists, they've got a few question marks. Your favourite, the top weight, Bristol MI, is he as good as what he was? He ran well at Lingfield, be quite a hard race in the heavy ground. Black Lion's 13-year-old. He's up £14 for his 2 Haydock wins so far. This is a stronger race. Sam Brown, like Ross says, good run behind Royal Upper Guy. He's a bit inconsistent, but Haydock does bring out the best in him. Lord de Menil, got to give him a shout. He loves Haydock. He won the race last year off a pound lower mark. And Natural Ross's big price one, Mint Condition, he won nicely here. So we've got loads of Haydock form to choose from. I've just gone for one who I think is better than his mark, Encarde, and you just hope the right Encarde shows up because he is a little bit inconsistent. But I do feel he's potentially a 145, a little bit better than what he's shown so far. He's only got a 10 stone 4, so he's got a nice lightweight in what's going to be really hard work at Haydock on Saturday. And he was where I think he's got a good chance. But it's a tricky Grand National trial, and narrowing it down to Haydock specialists doesn't actually help a great deal. So it's a race where most of them have got form under these conditions, and that will be absolutely vital.
Encarde 6-1 currently, and second favourite as we speak with SBK. Tom, it's the race that in the past hasn't been the best, as even though despite the name being a trial, hasn't really gifted us with many Grand National winners. But there is one owner in particular, JP McManus, that has done so well in the Grand National, and himself and John Joe O'Neill tried to complete a famous win in the race last year, weren't successful. Time to Get Up is an interesting horse in that he was well fancied when he ran in the Grand Stefton, but was disappointing. Being the only JP McManus horse in this race, you kind of always going to have a look through and see what his form lies in behind. Do you just put a big line through that run and start again with him?
But I think the key here is the fact that the Grand National weights are now out. Maybe he wasn't ready that day. Maybe it was a trip too short. There are plenty of reasons why he might not have produced the effort that many expected him to. But last year when he won the Midlands National, he was punted off the boards off a mark of 138, and he won like a really nice horse, a really nice stayer in the making, in fact. Yeah, he was disappointing last time, but I think if he can get back to that kind of form that we saw at Uttoxeter, he proved that day in the Midlands National that 1, he stays stamina sapping trips, 2, he handles heavy ground. 2 main factors which you need to win a Grand National trial, especially at Haydock. So I think the conditions will be fine for him. A £6 rise to 144 is perfectly reasonable based on that effort. And yes, as I mentioned twice now, he was unlucky. He was bad, last time at Aintree. But if he gets back to that form, he could be the well-handicapped horse in this race. I'm nowhere near as confident about Time to Get Up as I was third wind in Rendlesham. But I just thought it was an interesting runner at a double-figure price.
14 to 1 for Time to Get Up, so you've got some good prices in here. I'm going to side with Sam Brown. If Ross isn't, I very much will do so. And as you've already said it, the Royal Pagaille form, which I am a big heart warmer behind. And I just love the way that this horse would not lie down against Royal Pagaille in the Peter Marsh. He relished the conditions, enjoyed the test at Haydock, which is pretty demanding, as we know. And I fancy him at 13 to 2. And also at a price, a word for the Galloping Bear at 12 to 1. And the key for him is the soft ground, says his trainer Ben Clark, and that's what we're going to get on Saturday. So this is a good looking race in terms of a betting perspective. We're giving you all of views, in-depth analysis for the main races on Saturday. Time for naps and next best, and this can come from races outside the ones we previewed as well. We'll come to James first for a nap and your next best.
Yeah, my nap is filling the roof at Ascot. I think this is an easier opportunity than what he's faced in quite a few contests, actually. He was a good second in the Labrook. He ran so well at the top level in Novice Company last season, and Team Tizard are back on fire again. So he's a pretty confident nap for this weekend. My next best, and I'm slightly wanting to change my mind now, is Third Wind, because the great TC is so strong on him that I fear disaster will unfold. But he likes Haydock. I think a lot of his rivals have question marks, and he's got a good chance of repeating his win 12 months ago.
Good stuff. I feel like I know what's going to come next from Tom's nap. So
yeah, the nap is Third Wind in the 205 at Haydock. I think it's the bet of the weekend by a million miles, especially if he remains around 5 to 1. Incredible price. The next best, we're going to go a bit rogue again. over to Lingfield for a 0 to 50 handicap, which is, I mean, it's a weak race even for the grade, and that's saying something.
So much good racing on Saturday. So much good. We try to encourage the best racing.
Deary me.
But here we go.
Look, every race has to have a winner, right? And this is the one race where I think the winner is very obvious, and that's Extracurricular. I'll repeat the time: 4:55 at Lingfield. This horse is rated 50. Virtually carries top weight. But doesn't, which is a very good explanation. Represents trainer Richard Bandy, who's having a really good time of things over jumps with his runners at the moment. I think he can notch a first flat winner of the season. Extracurricular. Been running at Kempton over 1 mile and 7 furlongs and trying to make all. It's just so difficult to make all over those trips at Kempton. They go hard early and then they get racing really soon off the bend, and just trying to sustain an effort from the front while always gearing up the pace is just really difficult. Kempton form works exceptionally well at other all-weather tracks as well, I tend to find. An Extracurricular moving to Lingfield, sharper track, could kick off the bend, drawn in stall 1, best horse in the race, and hopefully will win.
There you have it, everyone. So like a true anorak, knowing that every race needs a winner. So you find them wherever they are. Extracurricular in the 4:55 at Lingfield. And as I said, there's really good racing there on Saturday, so worth keeping an eye on that as well. Head back up to Ross for a nap and a next best to complete ours.
So the nap, I'm going to the 3 o'clock at Ascot, the Sam Thomas trained, good risk at all. Came into the season with a big reputation, and things have been a bit slow to happen for him. He's struggled with his jumping, but he flew home at Warwick last time over 2 miles, really quickened up nicely. Charlie Deutsch takes over. Given his jumping issues, that cannot be seen as anything but a positive. He steps up 3 furlongs on a slightly stiffer track, slightly softer ground. He's around about 2 to 1. I think he'll take all the beating. And then the next best is Mint Condition in the Grand National Trial at Haydock. I think soft, heavy ground, low weight, former champion jockey Brian Hughes on board. I think he'll put up a strong display.
For me, my nap is going to be in the 4:25 at Haydock. Bob & Co. back off a break for David Maxwell, who's been loving these big Saturday winners. He had a fine win at Punchestown that took a lot out of him. He's had a good time off, and he's back in action on Saturday. My next best is Caribbean Boy to make it 3 out of 3 with James Bowen on board. So that's all our naps and our next bets. Any new customers can deposit a minimum of £10 and get up to £40 refunded. So a great incentive for any new listeners, new customers out there for SBK. Hopefully we've given you a couple of winners in their third wind. I'm slightly worried if he doesn't come off, if Tom Collins will be here next week, but let's hope he will. Let's hope everyone will rejoin us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and as I said, we'll be back with you. Winds and weather. Let's hope everyone stays safe, dependent, but we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining as always.